Waste Authority Budget Workshop to order. Before you is an agenda, call to order, invocation, pledge of allegiance, and approval of agenda. And there's only one item for our consideration today, which is the fiscal year 22, fiscal year 23 budget discussion. And I will provide the invocation, and we'll stand following the invocation. Everyone, please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we've made it through a year of peril. We thank you for having this authority have survived this year. We've met all of our goals so far this year, and from last year's, in one full year that we've been dealing with virus. Please make us respectful of others. Please make us be respectful of what everyone has had to endure. Please help those with losses. Please help those become fully healed who were afflicted. Today we'll be discussing our budget. Help us, guide us, that we keep our residents in mind, our staff in mind, and that we persevere through this budget and come up with something that is pleasing in your sight and pleasing to all those who are affected. I ask these things in your name. Amen. Please stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. I will ask for a motion to approve the agendas prepared.
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those approved, please say yes.
Yes.
All those who are not in favor, not hearing any, that's unanimous. And Ms. Bidding, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning. Glad to have everyone here this morning as we start this budget process. I just want to start off by, of course, asking you to please stop me at any point in time if you have any questions. If I start going too fast, I tend to talk fast, of course, but please feel free to like I said, stop me at any point, ask any questions you might have as we go along. I want to start off first by thanking staff for doing such a great job. As you'll see as we get through this process, there aren't a lot of changes, there aren't a lot of increases, so staff's done a wonderful job to hold and maintain their budget for next year. As Mr. Ives had said, we have been through quite a year, and staff has stepped up all year long to really do a good job. And again, as we prepared this budget, they did the same. And I just appreciate their help. It makes my life a whole lot easier as we continue to go through this process. We're going to start off, as I mentioned, of course, at the last board meeting, through our budget process. We prepare a 2-year operating budget. Operating budget, of course, is composed of both our revenues and our expenses. We have what we call a balanced budget, where our revenues have to cover our expenses. Our expenses being, of course, those day-to-day expenses, utilities, personnel costs, contractual costs, maintenance and repair, all those type of things. So any revenue that we receive has to cover those expenses each year. So we typically like to be able to see some sort of increase in our revenues to offset, of course, any kind of increases in our expenses. As you see, like I said, we'll get started with the revenue side of things. But like I said, our revenue consists of our tipping fees, the interest, our recyclable sales, those type of items. We hear from time to time, of course, everybody says, well, our tax money pays for your business. That's not the case here, of course. Our revenues is from the money that we receive here. Everybody that goes across that scale out there gets charged. So like I said, our tipping fees are very important to us. And as I mentioned to you, what our expenses are comprised of, like I said, our personnel, utilities, depreciation, equipment, maintenance, and repair. So we're going to begin kind of with the revenue side. I'm going to take a look at page 1. When I take a look at the revenues each year, I typically try to sit down with Mike as well to kind of go through this process, since he's more familiar, of course, with the landfill operations, with the MRF, the recyclable sales. But I do an analysis each year when looking at the revenues to try to determine the tonnages as well as the dollar amount that we anticipate based on kind of what we did the first 6 months of last year as compared to the first 6 months of this year, as well as the last 6 months of last year to see any growth in the second half of the year. To give us a good estimate, kind of a high end and a low end of where we think we may actually end up being this year so we can kind of plan for next year. Excuse me. We usually err on the side of caution. We try not to go too high. We don't want to go too low either, but yet try to be safe because like I said, last year was a different type of year. We're still seeing, of course, a little bit of that as we're slowly starting to come back to somewhat of a normal. But as you can see, as we go through this, like I said, you'll see where we kind of had to, we've seen some slight increases, maybe no changes, that type of thing. Beginning on page 1 is our revenue. I'm going to actually have you flip over to page 2 to begin with. I'm sorry. I don't have to go back and forth with you. This sheet on page 2 is a breakdown of our tipping fees. As you can see, in the very first column there, of course, is our different categories, our different materials that we have that we take in at the landfill. The second column is our tipping fees, the actual fees themselves. I just want to make a note, if you remember, we did propose and was approved in last year's budget a tipping fee increase for solid waste and mixed construction. That tipping fee increase will go into effect April 1st. And we went from, solid waste went from $36 a ton up to $38 a ton. Mixed construction went from $28 to $29 a ton. The other large increase was in our off-road tires. We increased that to $450 a ton April 1st, and that had to do with the fact that it is costing us $450 a ton to process those tires, and we are starting to see a good many more in the loads of tires. So after talking with DHEC, they said, that the fee that we currently had, which I think was like around $150 a ton, they said was way too low. So that was something that they had also recommended. And just to give you a little history on our tipping fees, our MSW tipping fee from 1999 to 2017 was $29 a ton. We went up, of course, if you remember, in 2018 where we did the tipping fee increase to $36 a ton. And now in 2021, we've gone up to $38. C&D from 1999 till 2002 was $29 a ton. It actually went down in 2003 when we had a cost of services study done, and so they actually told us it was okay for us to reduce the cost. It went down to $26.50 a ton in from 2003 to 2017. And then in 2018, we went up to $28 a ton, and then now in 2021 up to $29 a ton. So what we're trying to do, we had such large increases several years ago, and of course we were asked at that time to not hold off, not try to kick that can down the road, to do smaller increases to help municipalities and the haulers as well. So that's where we were last year when we needed that tipping fee increase to help with some of our recycling costs, if you remember. So those will be implemented April 1st. The next column that you see at the top, of course, is the actual tonnage that we did receive in FY20. Then we have the actual revenue that we received in FY20. The projected tons in FY21 is the next column. That's the year we're currently operating in. And then, of course, the projected revenue. And just a reminder, of course, that revenue figure was based on the fact that we had anticipated having that tipping fee increase July 1st. And now we're not seeing it, of course, until April 1st. So the fact that we're staying close to budget or very on budget with some of these is outstanding, with the fact that we're not able to implement that tipping fee. And of course, the column we're primarily going to focus on is the projected tons for FY22 and the projected revenue for FY22. As you can see, solid waste, we are not projecting any increase for the tonnage for FY22. We've pretty much maintained this year, which is great, and we anticipate it being the same. We've not really seen any increase, and we anticipate the same for next year. Yard waste, we have seen a little bit of an increase, about 4,000 tons, which is a 13.3% increase. Mixed construction, we are of course continuing to see an increase, about a 2% increase to 125,000 tons for FY22. Our C&D recycling is our largest increase at 33.3% from 15,000 to 20,000 tons. And that again has to do with the fact that we added those 2 positions, one being the lady at the scales house is actually checking the loads and sending more loads over to the factory. And as I've mentioned, I think in several of the board meetings, that has been a substantial help to that facility over there. We're seeing a great bit more material going over there, so it's definitely been worthwhile. And so we do anticipate the tonnage going up significantly next year. Our C&D recycling incentive, of course, goes hand in hand with the C&D recycling facility tonnage. Other than that, like I said, there are just some slight increases, maybe a few decreases. Our shingles are down just a little bit, but overall, you can see the tonnage for FY21 was 150 tons. We anticipate for FY22, 464,010 tons, which is a 2.4% increase overall in the tonnage. I'm gonna go back to page 1. As you can see, our tipping fee revenue for FY22, you have $177,500, which is a 1.62% increase. Our recyclable material sales, we have 2.5 million, which is a 32.35% increase. That is due primarily, of course, to our prices. We are starting to see those prices continue to go up. Like I said, Mike can maybe tell us a little bit more. Like I said, we actually sold cardboard for over $200, $210 this month. So we're continuing to see those prices go up. Of course, our tonnage is up a little bit as well, but like I said, we are seeing those prices go up, so we are anticipating significant increase in that revenue for next year. Of course, our interest earnings is down 54.5%. If you all remember Ms. Jones, last time she was here, she had mentioned to us that, of course, due to the market, due to the economy, interest rates are down, so we did decrease that significantly. No change in our waste tire rebate. That is the money that we get from the state for the tires that are collected. Each tire vendor collects the $2 fee that actually goes to the state, and we do get a portion of that back. And so, like I said, we're keeping that constant. It stayed pretty constant this year at 175,000. Our miscellaneous container rental, that is down 19.8% to 385,000 for FY22. That is our 8-yard containers that we have the businesses throughout the county. Actually, the pickup service is free, but we do charge them a quarterly fee for the rental of the container. We had several businesses that closed, of course, during the pandemic, and a lot of them haven't either haven't opened back up, haven't started their service back yet. So we have seen a little bit of a decrease in that area. Our landfill gas revenue, we did not budget for any increase right now. Like I said, I know you're aware that, of course, we are doing some major projects and renovations on the landfill gas system. So hopefully next year, maybe we'll be able to come back and see an increase in that revenue line item. But for this year, we kept it constant until we know exactly what we'll be producing from that. The C&D recycling facility, again, a large increase of 26.9% to $200,000. Again, as I mentioned, like I said, we're continuing to send more material over there, as well as, like I said, again, the prices being up is helping with that area as well. Our e-waste processing fee, as you can see, is down about 4%, and that is the fact that we have a new contract with a new company this year, so the costs are a little bit less. That's a positive for us as well, and hopefully a positive for the county, as they're the main ones that are bringing in the electronics to the MRF over there. And then, of course, we have our store, and our store is up about 6.25%. I think, too, with the pandemic, a lot of people have been utilizing that store a good bit more. They're doing a great job over there to continue to promote and sell the material. If you ever come by, there's not a day that you don't go by that there isn't a lot of cars over there. Constantly seeing people. So I think it was definitely with the new addition of the building, where they have better material and more material to offer, it's definitely been positive for them as well. So we've got a slight increase from 80,000 to 85,000 for next year for the revenue. So overall, you can see the revenue projections for FY22 are 19,472,500, which is a 2.5% increase over, FY '21. Anybody have any questions on the revenues? Okay. I'm going to actually move to page 4. Page 4 and page 5 are summaries of our expenses. And I like page 4, it's kind of one of my favorite. It shows you the differences between what we had budgeted in FY '21 and what we are currently proposing for FY '22, and the percent of increase or decrease by department. It kind of breaks it down by division, so like I said, you can clearly see where those increases are. And like I said, we'll go through line item by line item, but as you can see, in the general administration, the largest increase being in the finance department. And of course, I'll get into that, but if you remember, we did fund a position in the finance department this year for the lady at the scales house that's checking the loads. Same thing under of course, the operations division. They only saw overall 3.1% increase, which is a majority of that being personnel expenses, of course, but they also had the same thing. They had a unfunded position that was funded. So like I said, that's the largest increase there as well. In the public education, as you can see, they only had a 2.8% increase from FY '21 to FY '22. Under our designated funds, as you can see, only a 0.6% increase. And of course, those designated funds, that's for your landfill construction, closure, post-closure. Those are based on the tonnages. It's the 850 per ton that we put aside, and it is based on the tonnages. And since there was no increase in MSW, that did not change, but there was just a slight increase, of course, in our C&D. So that's why you see just a small, insignificant change in the designated funds for next year. Under the non-departmental, as you can see, they did see overall a 5.4% decrease. That is due to our unrestricted capital. As you can see, I had to decrease that $100,000, and that had to do again with getting this budget to balance. Normally that's where if we have some extra funds, we put it aside. As you remember, when we go through our capital, we always have a list of what we call our E items, which is kind of our wish list items that are only purchased if funding is available, if we have extra funds available, and if it's something that's absolutely necessary. Well, we started a few years ago putting money aside in this unrestricted capital to help purchase some of those E items. So during the year, we weren't constantly putting those off to the point where it was a dire need. And so we did have to reduce these funds a little bit this year in order to balance our budget. So that's the main decrease in that area as well. But as you can see, again, overall 2.5% increase from FY '21 to '23. So again, like I said, I have to commend staff because I think they've done a great job, obviously, as you can see, holding this budget. 2.5 is a very minimal increase in expenses. If there are any questions, I'm going to move over to page. Yes, ma'am.
Would you explain to me what the Solid Waste Authority Support Services allocation is for line 150?
I sure will. That is actually what we recoup from Horry County. We charge a minimal fee to them each month to manage the recycling centers.
Okay.
And so that's the fee that we get back from them.
Okay.
Good question. Page 6. I just want to go over our summary of budgeted personnel. As you'll see, the only real change in our personnel from FY '21 to '22 is the 2 unfunded positions in FY '21 that are now funded. You'll see those both at the bottom. And again, like I said, that's the only significant change in staffing that we have for next year. I'm going to begin on page 9, going over to the Board of Directors department. And of course, our Board of Directors is just that, it's our chairman and the board members. Weren't a lot of significant changes in this budget this year. As you can see at the bottom of page 9, we did increase our membership and dues by $1,500. As the cost of some of these dues and memberships tend to increase, we want to be sure that that all of you are capable and able to join any association that you feel is necessary. And so we felt like we're starting to see more of those wanting to be involved in so much more. So we did increase that $1,500 for next year. That's the only significant increase in that department. As you can see on page 10, the budget for the board of directors for FY '22 is $94,332, which is just an increase overall of 3%. On page 13 is Department 501, which is our administration department. That actually includes Mr. Knight, Ms. Powell. We do have one groundskeeper as well in that division. And then, of course, we have that recycling marketing clerk position, but it is unfunded. As you will see in all the departments, we do have, of course, increases in personnel costs that have to do, of course, with various things: health insurance, retirement, workers' comp, our tort and liability, all those things, and that'll be across the board for all the divisions. So I'm kind of covering that. Of course, as I reviewed yesterday as well, when we budget, we also budget for a cost of living increase, bonuses, those type of things. So you'll see all of that built into these personnel costs. As I also mentioned, of course, the retirement system did notify us that they were going to go up the 1% from 15.56 to 16.56% on retirement. They had planned to do that a few years ago. They let us know that every year they would go up 1%. They actually did hold it last year and did not go up due to the pandemic, but this year they are going back and only going to implement the 1%, thank goodness. So, but you'll see some of those changes, and that's, like I said, on page 13, you can see that's what some of the changes are. Of course, in the personnel services is just that. The health insurance, the retirement, all of our regular personnel costs. There is an increase in our property insurance. As you can see, from $3,668 to $4,500. We've seen some increases in insurance. Like I said, we continue to look around. We continue to talk and try to get the best rates possible, of course. But like I said, we have seen some significant increases in our property insurance this year. On page 14, you can see under consulting and miscellaneous, we did increase that line item. It's on 2415, line item 2415, from $200,000 to $250,000. As you remember, we have to budget for a waste study every other year. Is that what it is? Every 3 years. So we do have an increase of $50,000 for the waste study. And then, of course, in 2023, I just want to point out, we actually have kept it that same year because we'll have the management plan beginning in 2023. That's the increase you'll see in that line item. Those are the only significant increases or changes in Department 501. As you can see, their overall budget for FY22 is $1,094,647, and that's a 7.6% increase. And like I said, that primarily has to do with the funding for the waste study. On page 19 begins Department 502, which is the Finance Department. Within the Finance Department, we have the Director of Finance, our Deputy Director of Finance, 2 accountants, and 4 clerk positions. If you see under, at the bottom of the page, under 2415, Consulting and Miscellaneous, we have a significant increase there, and that has to do with our GASB study that we're required to do every other year now. And so that's why we've got the increase there for that GASB study that we're required to have done. Over on page 20, under small equipment, each year we take a look at our servers and we try to determine if we're going to need any kind of upgrade to maintain our software. And as you can see, we did have an increase of around $4,000 or $3,500, and that is for our office server in the office here to have that upgraded if necessary. Like I said, I haven't budgeted, doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be necessary to be done, but like I said, we're required every so often to upgrade our software, and to do so, sometimes the servers have to be upgraded along with that. The only other small increase is in merchant fees on page 21. And of course, that's just our credit card fees, and we've just seen just a small increase in that as well at our Scales House. Like I said, we're starting to see more people use those, but we are trying to offset that cost as much, through the customer. We do charge a fee, for those, so we are recouping a good portion of those as well. So overall, for Department 502, their budget increased 14.6%. As I remind you, that's the biggest portion of that bringing in personnel costs, because we have that additional position this year that wasn't funded last year. It is funded this year. On page 22 is the non-departmental. And as you can see, no significant increase in our Horry County Community Waste Disposal fee. That is the $2.25 that we send the county on every ton of MSW and C&D. And again, that has to do with the tonnage increase, and we didn't see one in the MSW. Let's see, the unrestricted capital, as I mentioned earlier, we had to decrease that due to balancing the budget. And then down below, you can see the store. The store expenses did increase slightly. That primarily has to do with some of their personnel costs as well. Just a reminder that, of course, the payment from the store, or from Council on Aging for the new building at the store, will come out at the end of each year. At the end of the year, I do an analysis within the year with the profit and loss, and that payment will be reduced from their actual profits at the end of the year. So I just want to remind you that we will be recouping the payment from them each year towards that building. Any questions on the Administration and Finance Division?
The merchant fees, why are we not charging what it would cost us to process that?
We are, our system will only allow us, it won't let us charge a percentage. It only allows us to charge a flat fee. And that's something that they're working on. And so because of that, there is still a little bit of difference. The bad part of it is if somebody comes in and their charge is only $5, they're being charged the same amount as somebody whose charge might be $1,000. So our software company is working on that, but at this time, it only allows us to charge a flat fee. So we do see a little bit of difference, but not significant necessarily, but we are trying to work on that, yes ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Our HGTC mechanic program, is that successful enough for me want to expand it? That's a very small expenditure.
Nanette, I'm asking her, because I know she kind of works with them. I'm not sure what we've gotten some good feedback from them, have we not?
Well, it started with a bang, and but I think everybody now is short, and mechanics are still hard to find. I understand a lot of the big companies are short. I was talking to the Caterpillar people, and I think they 2 or 3 vacancies there. So, of course, the Florence Darlington project is more of a Caterpillar sponsored program, so, but ours, we're in discussion with them now. If we don't see a better return, we may not participate. But we like the program, but we've got to see a benefit from the investment, other than some of the bigger companies that can pay more or got a more showy job, you might say. We started the program because of need, and we thought to make sure that we are getting something for that. If now we need to find out what we can do to get that return.
What's our mechanic position paying now? If you're a Class C, you start at the $16, $17 range. Class B, which is a higher, will go up a little bit more, and the top one's about $21.
About 23 now.
23 with the increase. Don't be hard to find anybody. Well, we've been looking for 3 months as well. One of our big things in anything we do is that there is no overtime. So even if you're competitive with the hourly pay, you get people to come and they'll say, well, you know, the rate goes, how much overtime am I gonna get? can't promise you any overtime. You might get some every once in a while, we can't promise you none. Well, I
They
can't,
want a guaranteed amount of overtime.
Well, when you pay him $16 to a mechanic, he's gonna need overtime to make ends meet. I mean, he's making 25, 30 everywhere else.
and it hadn't been but a couple of years that we adjusted all that. 2, 3 years that we adjusted and went up. We were actually lower than that.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, the market's changed since '08, the market has changed probably 3 or 4 times. We've had to adjust our whole staff 2 or 3 times, and it's been gut punch.
Mechanics, unless you paying them and giving them 10 to 15 hours a week in overtime. And our old ones, been here a long time, of course, they're making 24, 25, 26, but they've been here 20 years, so you pretty much contain them. But the ones below that, you just can't get nobody. Had a guy come in to start, was gonna be the fuel and lube guy. Starting out at $16 an hour, $16, $17 an hour. I said, one day,
When did you show up at all?
We had a mechanic come in for 3 days and left.
if these young kids really wanted to make money in their lives, could become a good mechanic, and they could just, the starting salary would be $24, $25 an hour, is not unheard of.
Yeah, I guess my question is, going back to what Bo said with the $5,000, if we're not seeing any return, of investment for our monies, over a period of time, would it not be best to look at using that money to add into maybe salaries or something else, rather than continue to pay for a program that we're not getting any benefits from? I don't know,
We agreed to 5 years.
a 5-year plan.
Get it, and it's time to either see a return or utilize the money in another way, and it may be put it in the salary range for mechanics and fuel guy, and I've told you before, at one time, mechanic could show up on the job and he'd have a snap-on toolbox. Now he gets out and he's got a laptop computer, and the toolbox, I don't know where it is, but,
Somebody else brings that.
so, we've already been talking about the program, and I told Annette to talk to the guy out there and put him on notice that if we can't even get a fuel guy out of the project, it's not benefiting us that much.
The other thing, Bo, you had mentioned is maybe talking to some of these, high school, the academic and technology centers, about maybe trying to start a program for kids that are in high school that may be just coming out.
Anything we can do to have the students understand the opportunities that exist
Yeah,
here.
which
Most
they-
people think of garbage collection and the guy in the back of the
Yeah.
truck. They don't realize that how much technology goes into what we're doing and the career potential here.
But I guess
People
too,
now retiring at 30 years, that's phenomenal. That people just don't know.
Well,
you
so
got
most
an
people,
age that may
most
be
people
coming
don't
out.
care about that retirement if they're 30 years old.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
They can care less about that
My
time
thing
they
is,
get about
if they're
50.
coming out of high school, maybe at a younger age, less responsibility, they may be more apt to take on a $16 or $17 hour job and not be so concerned about the other thing versus other people that are in the middle. They're looking for the big bucks, so.
What we're
That
doing,
Palm School has a mechanics school on
who's that?
it. That Palm School, PA
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, Palm has something.
Reach out to them.
But the problem is, what we're doing on our operator side is we're bringing people in that don't know how to operate a piece of equipment. We have them to train. There's a downside to that, because we have more accidents, more equipment tore up. But that's all we can get at the current rates coming in, is people that we're having to totally train, that's never had much to do with equipment. Maintenance side, you can't do that. It takes you years to get a good mechanic, to get him at the knowledge he needs. you got a training program, you just about have to physically train him, and we don't got the manpower to do that.
Do we want to highlight this as an area where we need to put funds if we want to do something to expand? Community area that we need to
We're looking, and I think Mechanican is, when Mike was teaching himself, he had to come along and load limb in the backyard. And now it's, I like it,
Well, I tell people, I got an 89 GMC pickup truck, I can take it down and take it apart blindfolded, and I got a 2016, and I won't touch that 2016, I carry it to the dealership, because there's too many wires and sensors and stuff on it, you just can't do it no more.
well, I mean, I would definitely, if somebody can get in touch with that farm school, maybe for further discussion.
I've got some contacts there.
But I know they rebuild car engines and everything out there, and so that might be another option.
I've got it done.
And Danny, when I talked to, Fort Georgetown Tech last week, I was talking to the instructor, and he mentioned that when they first started the program, they had a waiting list for people to get into the program. And now with COVID, he's only got about half of classroom of students.
Keep looking.
Thank you.
Next division is the operations division, and I'm gonna turn this over to Mike for him to go through his division with you.
I'm gonna let, Stephanie, who usually does the explanation in her department, so I'm gonna let her do Department 504, which starts on page 25.
For my budget, there were a few increases, tried to mainly keep everything the same. One of the first ones is 504-1410,
Like that little line, put your mask on.
training and certification. We did not have any funding in the year before, but these funds are for certification classes that we have through SWANA, the manager of landfill operations, continuing education hours. There's 2 people in my department that have to have a physical chemical wastewater operator license and the continuing education hours to maintain those licenses, and then a pesticide license.
And the manager of landfill operations was added this year because Stephanie got her certification to be a manager of landfill. That's where that's at.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, that's
How
great.
many we got now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll soon have 6.
Certified, qualified.
Oh, it's about $350 when we go to school to test EHAC. So, my thought process is the more people I got, the more eyes I got on it, the more people understand what the regulations are.
You gotta have one at the gate, so.
Yeah.
On the side.
Next, increase is 2420, which is on page 26. This is for engineering. The total increase was $1,170. But this covers, the annual groundwater monitoring events, which are done semi-annually. The stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is updated and gone through each year, just to make sure everything is in compliance and records are kept. We have a special waste analysis and implementation plan, which is anything that is not normal C&D, solid waste, or yard waste that comes in that we have to get approval on to see if it's something that we can take. And we have the new source performance standards compliance reporting, which will be due in that year time. And the master plan engineering design for expansion, which has to do with landfill gas. When they see the areas that we're going into, potential areas that would be good gas producers, so that we can go in and get that collection and that design information in, so that we know how to better plan our expansion, so that we control odors and remain in compliance with
When are you
that.
projecting you're gonna need additional manpower?
something we're just gonna have to look at year by year. Person that we have now, he does a really good job. He stays on top of everything, and he's new. He just started in September, and he's had a lot to learn. He's had a pretty full plate, but he's doing really good. He's always asking for, other things to add to and to help him learn the job and be the best he can in it. So I think that's just something we're gonna have to look at year to year as it
The
expands.
presentation on the gas expansion, he told us to be prepared, you'll need additional.
We will, but like I said, it's a year by year. We just have to evaluate how big our system is expanding. Probably one thing also that would govern that would be following under the NSPS regulations. They're very, very stringent, with temperatures, flare down time. There's so much more that has to be kept up with and maintained, and I'm not sure that one person would be able to handle all that.
Yeah, during that time, when you follow our federal regs, we kept it down luckily over the years. And as long as we keep those emissions down, we can stay under that threshold. I wouldn't be scared to say that you're not gonna need more than 1 or 2 because of the amount of data that you have to keep up with and keep it turned into the federal government on a regular basis. See, we don't have to do all that now, but once we fall in that threshold and we're real close to falling into it, then there's gonna have to be an immediate change.
For 3110, equipment maintenance and repairs, we increased that by $2,500. And the reason being, we've not bought any new equipment. So the equipment we're using is getting older, it's getting more wear and tear, so it's requiring more maintenance to be done to it. And on 2220, which is down at the bottom of page 26, materials and supplies, they've increased more due to more maintenance being performed in the gas system well field and on the leachate inflation and control system. So we're always having to buy piping and valves and, different things that go on the skid. We're replacing sensors and filters. I mean, it's just a whole lot of things that as they age, and I mean, these things, they run 24/7. So that incurs a lot of wear and tear. So there are things that we have to stay on top of and make sure that they're working properly. And then fuels and lubricant, which is 3120, that was increased by $1,115 due to the fact that we're seeing these increased fuel prices. So we have to make sure that we have money in there to cover fuel for fleet vehicles and any equipment that we use to maintain the properties here or properties over at the 1187 or Jason Boulevard, because we have to do the mowing. We mow Highway 90, which will start here probably next month or so as part of our Adopt a Highway program.
I would like to say that on page 26, 23, 28, household hazardous waste is one of the things that we do, that we don't have to do it. This stuff could go in the landfill. We take the position that we don't think it should, and that's the small batteries and paint. And it sounds like a terrible deal. But all this stuff is what you find under your kitchen sink and in your garage at home. Pesticides and Roundup and paint thinner and batteries. That's one of the do good things. It's wise to do that. It isn't just so much the hazardous materials in one item, combination of hazardous materials in one space. They play their deal up. And I think by isolating them, we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, and not that you would do it that much, but you could change the composition of the leachate.
That's right.
Got more material going into the land.
That would change our water quality determination and our fees from Brand Strand.
That was one of the things that I was looking to put on our operations committee, not this time, but next time. is how we can, whether it be through signage, a small sign that says, "Did you know?" Certain things that could hazardous waste. I know that we do a lot of that and it's a great thing, it costs us. But I think we need to do that because some of these things can actually cause fires in landfills. So I think it's beneficial to us to do this as well as keeping it out of any of the leachate or anything we have there as much as possible. But I would like to see if we can educate the public on doing more than that, because I know a lot of people that just throw their old cell phones, their old batteries, anything in a bag that they throw in there so that they don't have to do that. And if we, like the sign that we did, said, "Don't throw away your future, recycle," I think a lot of people have seen that. People have told me, well, they didn't think about it, but maybe they should. Maybe in the future, we might want to have some signage that said, "Did you know that you can do this?" We have that at each facility, but that is something that I had meant to tell you on our next operations committee meeting I'd like to address, as well as anything else that could cause fires in landfill and whatever. I think we need to kind of take a look at that.
Next.
Thank you, John.
On page 30. This is the landfill portion of the operation. You can see our electricity went down from 138,000, that's at the bottom of your page, to 68,000. That was due to us no longer running the pumps in the pits that we got. And so we reduced that. We had electric pumps to pump the water out of the pits. And that's now related to King. King's responsible for all that. When he gets done, there won't be a pump. There won't be a pit. So that deep that we need that kind of electricity with, so it'll be reduced. On page 31, we reduced engineering on 2420. We did have an increase on 2432 from 70 to 100,000. And that is basically due to concrete crushing. We crush the concrete that comes in here and use it for road bed and stuff. So last time we had it was 104,000, so this time we increased it to 100,000, based on the last time we did it. Hauling services, I know it says shingle hauling in there, but that'll be coming out. This hauling services is for, now we have to buy road bed material. So if we don't got enough concrete coming in that we can crush it and have enough material for to build roads. Now, we constantly building roads. We did start a process of where we're using shingles to help build the roads. So we're putting a layer of shingles down and then put material on top of the shingles to try to give it some stability, and that has worked well. But it still won't take the place of that pit out there with all that cocaine in it. So we will have to now be purchasing it. So we will be, we increased that to 135,000.
Now, these roads that he's talking about, it's not coming in the entrance road. This is a road on the working face inside the landfill.
See, every time we go out on the lift, we have to build a road to go out to the end. Then we come back, start another lift, we have to build another road, or either go down that road and then build one off of that road. So we're constantly building roads up top. So we're looking at, we're looking at an increase, material we didn't have to buy before that we do have to buy now. We did put a bid out for material, different types of material that we would use, and we got those numbers back. And that's what made us increase this to about 135,000.
Can you use any of the glass that we process to do any of the road?
The glass, we don't generate enough of it to do with. Number two is we sell most of it we get in. Number three is the glass is rounded and it won't bind together. And you need something that'll bind together. It'll just roll out. So we mix the sand portion of it a lot of time with material to give us more of, like we got a little bit of cocaine, we'll mix some glass sand with it. And it'll work fine, but you can't work You just, the aggregate won't bind together, it's round. We did do some decrease in leachate, equipment. And that's basically due to we fixing to upgrade the system and we think we'll spend less money next year. That overall, on page 32, overall contractual services went down by 2.4% or $30,000.
What number?
Page 32, contractual services, total of all that, the last page in this one. So it's 30,000, a reduction of 30,000 or 2.4% for that section of the budget. Materials and supplies went down, small capital went down, building maintenance and repair went down. The overall supplies and materials is down by $22,500. On page 33, the business and travel stayed the same. And our depreciation equipment went up. We got new equipment. It's dedicated to the landfill. That's the MSW side of the landfill. And so we had a 17% increase in depreciation on equipment, which overall, with the decreases and increases, including landfill depreciation and landfill equipment depreciation, is about a 2.8% increase. Any questions on 510?
Mike and Jan, explain one more time how this depreciation works on this equipment.
Okay, so the depreciation, if we buy a new piece of equipment, we estimate how long it will last, and then we take a portion of that money and spread it out over that time period. Example would be 5 years. You got spend $100,000, it means you got to depreciate $20,000 a year off of it. And we put it in an account so when it comes time to replace it, we can use that money to replace it. Typically, it does not, if you bought a piece of equipment today for $100,000, in 5 years, it's $105,000 or $10,000. So that's where your depreciation account gets in trouble. So, they won't let us set aside more than we purchase it for. So we always funded a little bit of money into that depreciation account. I think any
It's a
interest.
savings account then for multi-year projects.
That's exactly right.
That's just for equipment, that's rolling stock, bulldozers, trucks, that kind of stuff.
Right.
In the day he's talking about, they won't let us put more in it than it costs.
It's Gatsby, that's
The
right.
auditors, because I've been hammered on that, so that we know it's gonna cost more. So that's where we are. With Gatsby one more time.
You know, we beat that thing around 100 different ways to try to figure out how to make it more efficient or thing, but it does do that. And the depreciation on the landfill is, so if we put in a ton of waste, we depreciate it, and I get hit by that depreciation. So the more tons I get in, the more depreciation I get hit for.
For you.
And
For
that's,
me.
and that depreciation landfill is future landfill construction.
Yeah. So we set aside that money for the thing, that's where that money comes from, to fund those accounts. Closure and post-closure account, construction account.
And that's just another increment in government, it's called pay-go, pay as you go. And this depreciation is just a buy each year on an $800,000 piece of equipment. And I know we get tired of me talking about downtown, but before we started this downtown, you had to buy 35 police cars in 1 year. Well, nobody else got anything that year but police cars. But when you set aside, and they have to pay that part in their budget each year, so when it comes time to step up and want something new, the money is pretty much there.
And I know you've had Jen say, well, they put off buying a piece of equipment. There's a pros to that, because we don't have to pay that depreciation for that equipment once it's fully depreciated. But the other side to that is, if you put it off for 4, 5, or 6 years, you got $100,000 in there, and you put it off for you, but 6 years later than you should have, the cost of that equipment's more.
Yeah.
But we think the benefit is to hold on to it as long as you can, as long as it's functioning good, and you can get a couple more years out of it, to get all you can out of it before you go buy a new piece of equipment.
That you can use the old piece of equipment before you sell it to train those people that keep breaking it.
Problem with the old equipment, new equipment, technology is different.
I'll tell you what, it's hard to get rid of old equipment around here. Everybody starts screaming, find 101 ways to do it. You just have to finally just set your foot down and say, we are. It'll get stacked up on the back 40.
And Gov Deals helped us a great deal with that. I mean, you put it on, you don't have an auction, you don't seal bid it here. And that, people all over the United States looks at that thing and
What it done when we went to Gov Deals is that what happened was we'd stack up a bunch of equipment out there and it may be a year or 2 years before they auctioned it off. But what happened to it is somebody needed a part, they'd run out and take it off. And the hoses would rot on it, everything in the world, and then by the time it come time to sell it, it wasn't no good no more. So you didn't get much out of it. Now we sell it the minute we quit using it, and therefore we get more out of it when we go to sell it. And now the employees can bid, easier for them to bid on it because they can
It's a
go,
comparative price.
they go through the Gov Deal just like everybody else does and bid on it. So there's no way that anything could be done wrong for an employee to buy. On page 36, on line 2425, which is the second line from the bottom, is $2,800 increase. We basically moved some money from our monitoring and testing supplies that's on page 37 to this line item. That's why you see that increase.
This is the yard waste department.
Yeah, this is yard waste department. So this is compost testing, yard waste testing, and those in our dues. So, we moved some money from one department, one line item from 2225 to 22. We just moved it from one section of the budget to the other. Moved it to 2425. So we moved that money, we had and that's why you see the increase in supplies in the field, because of that money. Other than that, the budget's pretty much the same, on this budget, not much change in it at all. A little bit of increase on membership and dues, and that's because the U.S. Compost Council, and some other dues that went up on that line item.
You'll actually see a decrease in the personnel services for this department, and that's because we had, some employees that either left or retired, and we hired new, of course, at a lower rate.
Any questions in that department? On page 38. This is 512, the C&D landfill. You see on contractual service, a small increase of about $1,000, that's due to property insurance.
On page 40.
That's on page 40, yeah. And on page 41, the only major increase there was in equipment depreciation, and that was caused with new equipment. So that's when we had to start depreciating that equipment. Last year, we didn't have any depreciation. This year, we did.
511 is a big jump projected for next year.
So the C&D recycling department, page 44. Of course, our personnel services, you will see an increase in that. And that's about $61,000 increase. And that's due to us funding a new position for the C&D recycling facility in order to increase the tonnage that we're sending over there. I got the board's approval on that, to fund an unfunded position, and that's what that is. On page 45, due to the increase in temporary people and hours of operating, we had to increase the maintenance, contractual labor services, And if you'll notice, and just in case you were aware, yesterday Jan showed you a number of 380,000. For contract labor, it's 310 here. The reason being is that most of the time, even though we need 14 people to operate at full max, I think this morning we ended up with 9. So there's several days a week that you got less employees. It's not that you don't need them, but you just can't run at full speed because those people didn't come to work. Overall, this budget is hit the largest increase because of materials and supplies and other things due to increasing. It's about 22% overall increase in that budget. Any questions?
Well, it is amazing that we have the increase on the fuel, the supplies. We budget for 20% increase on the people's salaries and so forth. And we continue to keep this under budget.
We do try to work at it very hard. And our numbers, our sales of material over there has gone up. I mean, we never exported material out of the C&E recycling facility because of the quality of it. We now have the quality enough that we ship, and sometimes we ship it export. So that means a good $30 increase, 30% increase in pricing that we get for that material.
The quality of that work and you doing that is amazing, and we certainly do appreciate every one of you in those divisions and the people that you're training to work with to do that. The other question I have, which I have every year, is and we passed, I think that was on page 39. I just want to make sure our closure and post-closure funds are where they should be.
Yes, ma'am, they are. We
Okay.
continue, like I said, we continue to look at that every year.
The reason Mike sounds like an auctioneer going through this budget, he's got a landfill inspection at 11:30.
You're not in a hurry, are you?
No, I do whatever y'all need. If y'all got a question, please ask. Stop me. That's the most important thing, is that y'all understand it, what's going on, and understand what we do. That's the most important thing. If I got my right hand right here, Stephanie, so if I have to leave, she can leave, or either I can leave and go do the inspection. So, I've already told her if we didn't get done by 11:30, she could take off and go do the inspection, so.
And somehow we can't put DHEC off.
No.
No.
Nor should you.
In Department 519, they start on page 48. That budget is, very little changes on page 48. 49, 3130, you'll see a $15,000 increase in maintenance contracts. That cost is related to our, maintenance program. It was on a server that we own here inside. They no longer support that server program, and we had to go to the cloud. So it's all internet-based now. So that program keeps up with the maintenance on our equipment, our manpower, our fuel usage, our oil usage, all of that. And it's $15,500 a year. Just seen Jan's face when I walked in, told her I had to have it.
You do make them defend every line, right?
Oh, yes.
In order for us to switch this year, it cost us $5,000 to get over into the program, and then the annual license fee is $15,000. The plus to it is now the guys can take it and work it with their phones on the landfill. So if they need to look at something on the landfill about a piece of equipment, if they got a problem with a piece of equipment, or if they are in Conway and got caught, they can get right on their phones and sign right onto the system and look at it. So it gives them more mobility with their phone system, where now they would have to go to the shop, get on the phone, get on the laptop, do the searching, where now they can do it in the field. Any questions on that?
But we'll be paying it again next year. This isn't a one-time.
It's annual.
It's annual.
That is an annual cost, yes, do it every year? Even though they're not updating anything,
They'll
That's
update it and maintain it for free of cost.
everything.
Yeah,
And the answer is
currently
it's
the
in
way
the
it
cloud.
is, currently the way it is, you can only have so many users on it. For every user, there's an additional fee. Every user, there's additional fee. Now it's, everybody in SWA can be on it.
What's the name of the program?
It's RTA.
RTA.
RTA?
Ron Turley Associates. We've been using it for,
Donna was here,
I
so
started saying probably
she's the one who chose the program.
almost 10 years maybe we've been using it. So we're very invested in it, and it's a phenomenal program. But as with any kind of software, everything changes and everything grows, and, you know, I hate to say you kind of get tied into it, but you do. You know, kind of like our financial software, things like that are required after so much time, they won't support it. And that's the point we got to with this. If we didn't move with them, they wouldn't support it anymore. We wouldn't get the upgrades, you know, those type of things. And as Mike said, definitely the ease of use for the mechanics as they're out and about makes it worthwhile as well.
But this Microsoft model of licensing fees rather than,
Technology's costly.
It
Well,
is,
it's also tied into our fuel program.
it is. That's what I'm saying. Like I said, it feeds several things.
So it ties into our fuel program. Jan looks at it when she needs to look at it on cost. I can see if a piece of equipment, or Richie can see whether a piece of equipment is using too much oil, or, you know, your maintenance, it just keeps up with that piece of equipment. You can run a history on that thing and look at it. So it's working.
And it helps the managers be able to go in and take a look, especially somebody like Rodney that has all the different trucks, to see what kind of work's been done, when it's been done, maintain those type of files as well.
Well, what we do now, they have to go to Peggy to get the reports. When we get all this, if somebody wants to get in and be on the system, they can, as a user only, and they can run the reports right from their desk. But it was a chunk increase, so. All equipment went down, office supplies we went down, printing, and materials and supplies went down by about 19%. Supplies and materials went down by 19%. We did have some dues increase for the maintenance shop. This year, we just was paying for it out of another line item and just finally decided to move it where it belonged in membership. Tires and other things. The shop overall, increases, most of their increase was in the RTA. Other than that, they would have been below their last year's budget if we had not had the $15,000. And the reason for that is, that's the personnel, we've done some upgrades in the shop over the years, every year, and we took some of those upgrades out, and decided to do the cost. In other words, we put equipment in that made things run easier, that it needed to operate when we went in the shop. This year, we sort of pulled that back and said, we're not gonna do that this year. I'm not saying we're gonna do it next year, but this year, we're not gonna spend that kind of money. We put new shelving in for our parts room, got it organized, done those kind of things last year, so we're not gonna be doing this year.
How was the equipment that you put in there, went in and cleaned everything and put the equipment in there to keep the dust out and working correctly? The fans and,
For the Murph,
yeah,
they're working good where they're at. We need some more of them. Where they're blowing at, they're keeping the dust all out the ceilings. But
okay.
you gotta realize, remember, we didn't have enough money to do that, and when I get to 521, you'll see, in the capital side, when you look into the capital side for the MERV, you'll see them in the wish list. 4 of those fans to cover the rest of that MERV, to keep all that stuff blowed out the ceiling. But, you know, we don't have the money to go buy them, so we put them in there, and Jan has to look at her reserve accounts, and I'll say, I really gotta have this, and she'll say, well, you got enough money to do this, but we can't do all these other things, and so she takes that $300,000, and of course, you don't wanna spend no more in case something major happens that is needed for it, but we have to go beg for those E items. And she gives us that money based on the overall need of solid waste authority.
what do the fans cost?
$8,000 apiece. Probably need, I think I've got 2 or 3 in there.
How many do you need, 2 or 3 of them?
And they do a good job of, helping the people working there as well as keeping that dust and dirt out of the equipment.
Well, it helps to keep the fire hazard down at the burn.
Yeah.
Because it keeps all the dust blowed out the ceiling, and those of you that was on the board, remember that OSHA come in and made us clean the whole building at one time. Didn't come in and find us, we asked for an inspection, and that was one of the things that they did on the volunteer inspection, it said, that dust has gotta go. Insurance people saw it, said it's gotta go, so we had to clean the whole inside of that building, that's when we put the fans in. And where the fans is at, is not, but we have areas that's not covered with those fans.
What about misters in lieu of fans? So
Misters
kids are-
have a tendency, the problem, and some people use misters. You misters, over your employees is one thing, but to mist the whole building, it's gonna make it too wet with all that dust. And I'm afraid that as tight as they are on moisture with selling the material, you're gonna get a certain amount of moisture in the material.
With misters, it gets it down and stays down.
Yeah. But you'd have to mister the whole building, and I'm concerned about doing that. Just that.
The fans would be a need, not a want.
Sir?
I said your fans would be a need and not a want.
A need for Mike, but it ain't a want.
Perhaps a little bit, see if you can find the money to get him one or two, whatever man needs.
And I'm
But
sure.
if you notice, we kept them in the budget year after year, hoping that we'd get that money there.
Sure.
I'll be able to find 24 grand.
And
I would think so somewhere.
Well, with the pandemic, we scared to spend any of that money. I think we spent very minimal of that money this year because of the pandemic, and so we kept it down to try to be able to balance our budget.
If it's gonna help the employees in there to produce better working environment,
At the Murph, we keep the air conditioners running
I'd say.
and fans on if they're outside the room.
Right.
So most of them have, there's not as hot as you would think, because we keep air conditioners on them and heat on them in the winter. And there's certain areas that we don't have heat, that we haven't figured out exactly how to do that without it
Now, you
costing.
see, the misters would have a dual role here.
Turn hot water on or cold water on.
I think that bears discussion, because when you look at a piece of equipment, you have to look at, those of us from private industry, look at what it brings to the table, what it saves, what it does, and all of that. So maybe you should add the fans to our next operations meeting, and we'll discuss it.
We could very easily at the end of the year have some money left in that reserve account and,
Yeah.
and buy them. We'll just have to, but we were not spending much of that money to see how we balance, because we gotta balance our budget. We still got
Right.
revenues.
The public hearing is May 4th. So if you're proposing to change budget accounts in any of your committees, we will need to schedule meetings between now and.
And we have to get this budget to council for their workshop, and so that's in April.
That's
So,
April. What's the date?
April 15th. So I'll have to have it to them probably like next week.
Uh,
At least some preliminary figures.
Special Projects Committee, you have a consideration of an additional.
I mean, most of the board feels today that we need to
That's what
put
I'm
them
saying,
in.
he's got the money, he's got them budgeted in FY 21 in his capital, and we have the money there that he could purchase those fans. If the board feels like we should move forward with it, we can do that today.
I think they ought to move forward and get the fans.
You live with two.
He's got five budgeted. So, he can get up to five,
We can get up to 4.
up to five.
Okay.
Well, he's smiling, so he knew he had.
How you know I was smiling?
You can see the wrinkles around
I
your
got my
eyes.
glasses on.
Well, it's gonna improve the working environment of the employees.
Yeah, they don't necessarily help the employees with heat or fan, because they don't blow on, they're like jets. So you blow stuff off the line if they're running while you thing, so we blow them at night to keep the ceilings blowed down, equipment blowed down, it blows the dust down.
Explain where these air conditioners are in that big humongous building.
So we have air conditioners in each one of those rooms that employees are in. And then if they're outside of the room, they have a fan with a mister on which is what we use over here, fans with misters on it. And then people will tell you over there, if them things, when it gets hot enough, they'll come to you right quick and say it's time to cut on them fans, because it'll drop the temperature about 15 degrees of that mister coming out of it. So there was no way to help over there with the heat except the misters and the big fans. And we did the same thing at the MRF for people that's outside of those rooms. Other than that, they are, they're getting either air conditioner or heat. And
Well,
believe me, in that dust environment, it costs about, between the monthly maintenance and the regular maintenance, probably about $1,200 to $1,500 a month to keep them running.
Have we looked at radiant heat?
We have. Yeah, I've
Because
looked at
that
it.
might be more effective in that space.
Yeah.
It is expensive, but once it's installed, it'll pay for itself.
Long term, it's,
The radiant heat in the, when
There's
it's
radiant heat in the building now. But what's happened is, over the years, we've never used it. The building was actually designed to heat the whole building.
Yeah.
But by the time you bought enough LP, had, what are those, 500 gallon, 1,000 gallon tanks out there? There was 3 of them. You had to have them filled every week.
So you can also fire with electric.
They were expensive to operate, so they quit operating after they built the MRF, and they've never been operated since. And now with the new design, if you move the equipment up too close to them, they just couldn't turn them on no way.
Well, it's not designed to heat the space, it's designed to heat the
Metal,
floor and the
metal,
walls.
yeah.
well, I'm assuming that between you and Jan, you have kept this at a want, not a need. So throughout the budget, those different things that we have budgeted in here, that may be one thing I'd like to sit down and talk to both of you together with and prioritize that on what it would do the most good, because to keep that dust out of the equipment and to minimize a fire hazard, those two things are
it's critical.
critical to me, as well as what good it does the employee, because when you keep dust as much as you can, having had asthma and respiratory problems all my life, you know, even people that don't have those, that kind of environment's pretty devastating in my opinion. But keep in mind, as we talk about these different things that you have as wants and needs, because I know you prioritize those, and I would like to be aware of what those priorities are in that, to see if we can't do some of that in this budget.
On page 53, electric and heating, 2115, set down towards the bottom, due to the optical sorters, our electric bill is gonna be about $30,000 higher a year. We haven't covered that in this year's budget, by pulling it from somewhere else to add to the electrical. But, so we budgeted that money for the electrical bill.
Is our electrical bill with Santee Cooper or with Ori Electric?
Only electric.
Santee Cooper's a lot cheaper. Why? Since we're doing the gas and
Only
then
electric line,
It's your service area.
you don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice.
don't have a choice.
You basically take your electric where they tell you to get it from.
How much you wanna run a power line?
What's that?
How much you wanna run a power line, the lines closest? Santee Cooper line.
I think they had some kind of agreement not to go.
Other than that, yeah.
I know when we put our green power plant in the back, they had to get Ori Electric to bring the lines to the system. They couldn't even bring them in from somewhere else. Had to bring the Ori Electric, had to bring them in to take that power out.
Santee Cooper. It's for sale.
Our, telephone and fax line has went up, about $5,000 a year. And that's due to, we now have fiber optic over there, just like we put in this building. With technology, we couldn't tie into the optical sorters if we didn't have faster internet service, so we had to increase, and that increases by about $5,000. And of course, our rejects are down due to less rejects. going into the landfill, which is a good thing. On page 54, our contractual service for electronics is at 400,000. You'll notice Jan has 600,000 in her numbers, and that's got to do because this 400,000 does not include our labor for processing, sorting, and other things that we have to have, which is recouped from the counties or cities. So it's a flow through, in and out, whatever that cost is. So you, overall contractual services is down by about 10%, but that's due to the electronics. We did increase the materials and supplies by about 5,000. Most of those are, we sell gloves. We require the temp agents to provide their employees with gloves, vests, eyeglasses. We provide the mask, these. But we provide, the temp agency provides them. So if somebody comes in and they didn't bring one, we have them on site because we want them to be able to go to work. So we issue them to them and then they're charged back to the temp agency. So a lot of this money is going to be pass-through money, in and out. Small equipment down on page 55. And other than that, the whole budget is down by about 6%. That is due to mostly electronics. Any questions on the Mercer? All right, on page 58. This is our collection and hauling of our OCC and other things that we collect and haul. So the only major thing down is on the 2438. You'll see a $13,500 reduction. We bought camera systems for our trucks. In the event that something happens or a customer calls and says, we had an accident, you hit this, you hit that, we can go back and look at the system and see what exactly happened. Those cameras have saved us some money because we didn't hit some things we said was told we hit. If there's a sudden jarring of the truck, it will activate a recording. So if he bumps something or hits a big hole or runs over a curb, it activates the recording and sends that recording to the supervisor. So we did that to help reduce our accidents and claim costs. And we went to cameras. But before that, we had GPS systems on there, and we took all the GPS systems off because there's no longer a need to duplicate it. On page 59, we reduced the small equipment to 59. Fuel and lubes on 3120, went down about $10,000 on there. Overall, even with the labor, personnel costs, you're only talking $20,000 increase in that whole budget for the whole year, even with everything else that went on. Most of that was in your labor costs. That's the end for me, unless somebody's got any questions.
Your small equipment reduction is noticed.
Okay, any other questions for Mike on his operations division? If not, we're gonna move over to Esther. Esther's gonna.
Yeah.
Anybody need a break?
I'm a firm believer the mind will only absorb what the seat will endure. And we've been here for about an hour and a half. We got about an hour and a half to go, and we're got a 100-page agenda, and we're on page 60, which means we're a little bit further than half through. So I would like to make the suggestion that we take a
5 minutes.
We take a 4.5-minute break, which means we'll probably be back in 5.
Temporary journal.
Hang up and stretch and let the blood get to the place that they've gotten it for a while.